Mooney with us, and Stephen will make a presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask some questions. First of all, though, I want to record the apologies. Our Chief Executive, Alison, can't be with us this evening. Councillor Adam Gannon can't be with us, and Councillor Josephine Deehan can't be with us. And then I'm going to take any other apologies. First of all, Roy.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Warrington, Councillor Irvine, and Councillor Ovens will be a few minutes late.
Okay, thanks, Roy. And Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. We've got Councillor Podrigan Kelly, Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald, Councillor Colette McNulty. I think that's what I've received there, Chair.
And Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald. And Nolene.
Yeah, there's Councillor Debbie Coyle, Colette McNulty, she said, sorry, Podrigan Kelly, and Patrick Withers. Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Nolene. And Paul.
Councillor Mahon, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. And Bernard.
Councillor McPhillips.
Thank you. And Stephen.
Councillor Riff.
Okay. And just as a little aside as we go on, I want to this is our first full council, as it were, our special council meeting. I want to pass on our good wishes to, and I'm sure the Chamber all joins me in that, to Gavin and his family for speedy recovery. And we wish him just that. So if you'd pass that on for us. Okay, that's all our apologies, I think, covered. So what I'm going to do now is ask Stephen. Oh, yes. So if there's any declarations of interest? No? Okay. No declarations of interest. Then I'm going to ask Dr. Stephen Blackwell to lead off and make the presentation.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Chair and Councillors, for the opportunity to present to you this evening at this special council meeting. I'm Steve Blackwell. I'm NI Water's Head of Investment Management, and I'm here with Roy Mooney from...
Yeah, Stephen, can you just pull closer to the mic or pull the mic down? Or...
Is that all right? Okay, no worries. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, I'm Steve Blackwell, NI Water's Head of Investment Management. I'm here with Roy Mooney from Developer Services, the Pre-Development Manager, who's in our Customer and Operations Directorate. In this presentation, we're aiming to give you a basic understanding of Northern Ireland's publicly owned water utility, what we do, and some of the challenges that we are facing. NI Water was established in 2007 as a regulated utility and a government company. We're a standalone company. We have a board of directors and are subject to independent regulation. It's similar to what happens with gas and electricity in Northern Ireland, and it's the same form of regulation as happens to the UK water companies. We produce 6-year business plans called price controls, which are scrutinised by the independent utility regulator. And the price control period is PC21, which we're currently in, and that runs from the 1st of April 2021 to the 31st of March 2027. We're an efficient company, and we've transformed from a government department into a modern, efficient utility, and we've returned £1 billion to the public purse since our inception. This slide comes from our annual report and accounts, and it gives you a flavour of the size and scale of the water utility that's publicly owned. To the left, we have what we refer to as source to tap, or the water side of our business, and to the right, we have sink to sea, which is the wastewater. On the water side, we treat raw water at 24 water treatment works, and these treatment works produce on average 605 million litres of treated water every day, which is consumed by over 900,000 households and businesses, and it's supplied via 286 reservoirs, about 350 pumping stations, and over 27,000 kilometres of water mains. On the wastewater side, the company collects 362 million litres per day from about 740,000 households and businesses, and that's through about 6,500 kilometres of sewers, and we use over 1,300 pumping stations to do that. Wastewater is then treated at over 1,000 wastewater treatment works and recycled safely to the environment. We're Northern Ireland's largest user of electricity. Water and wastewater is heavy to move around the country, and energy also powers our raw water and wastewater treatment processes. Every part of our infrastructure network, whether it's treatment works, a pump, a pipe, has a finite capacity, and most of LI Water's assets are legacy from decades ago, and much of the capacity that can be handled today is based on these legacy assets. I also want to highlight that we have safety valves on the sewer network, and these should only operate during storms and are there to safeguard homes, businesses and hospitals from sewage backing up in the network during these wet weather events, and these are known as storm overflows. Okay, so this slide is highlighting our fats, oil and grease or FOG campaign, as we're asking for the council's help and support by raising awareness of the environmental harm and damage caused by fats, oil and grease on our equipment and spills to the environment when these substances consolidate to form fatbergs. The Stop and Think Not in the Sink message encourages everyone to dispose of their FOG or fats, oils and grease appropriately, and business owners to ensure that their grease traps are working correctly. Councils can support us by imposing requirements for grease management systems to be in place and maintained when issuing planning approvals. Furthermore, there are potential opportunities for wider regulation of the premises to incorporate waste management, fats, oils and grease management, and when undertaking food hygiene inspections. The build-up of fats, oils and grease solidifies, and when combined with other inappropriate materials such as wipes, it clogs up the system and it can take several days to dislodge a fatberg and clean it up. This, of course, costs money and can cause pollution of concentrated wastewater to the environment. LI Water has and continues to work with council planners regarding the local development plan, which takes out to 2030. This slide is just to show that we're familiar with the council's vision, which is set out to facilitate delivery of 5,000 new homes and nearly 5,000 new jobs. To support housing and economic development requires a clean, safe public water supply to all those new homes and jobs, and equally to support this growth, there need to be connections to a modern, efficient wastewater drainage and treatment system, so that wastewater can be conveyed, treated and safely returned to the environment without causing pollution. We want to see a thriving, prosperous Northern Ireland right across, across all the 11 council areas, and of course that includes Fermanagh and Omagh. This slide provides an overview of the key PC21 water investments. The PC21 projects highlighted in dark green are already progressed. The light green one there is planning to start this summer. You can see there a range of investments where we're targeting upgrades to water treatment works, work on trunk mains and water mains rehab to help convey water to customers and to increase resilience of our networks. We're upgrading, say, Killy-Hevelin water treatment works, in that we're replacing the filter in all the medias. We're about 3/4 of the way through that £5 million projects. And we've got some large additional storage projects, such as the Loch Macrory Hill, which we're currently trying to move through. I think some planning. It's an area of special scientific interest. So those are our plans that are set out there on the water side of the network of our business. So this slide gives you an overview of the wastewater investments that we have, the key investments. Those started in green, or those highlighted in green, are already well progressed, and the remaining investments are planned for later in the 6-year programme. Just to show you a few of the images that we have of us out on the ground. Here we have Mountfield, which is, here we have Mountfield, which is a treatment works that was built in the 1970s. It suffered from capacity issues to treat the flow and loads from the current population. And also it struggled to comply with the regulatory discharge consent. And we also need to cater for future growth. So the upgrade of Mountfield, which has been agreed with the Environment Agency, Northern Ireland Environment Agency and the utility regulator, will help deliver the upgrades and provide compliance and meet the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive. On the right-hand side, you have an investment being made at Tamlet. This was originally constructed in 1988, and it's been struggling to treat wastewater to the required standard. So we're implementing a solution which will provide adequate treatment for the flow and load associated with that wastewater catchment, and it will reduce operational intervention at that site and provide compliance with all relevant health and safety and environmental legislation. This slide here, really just to give you a flavour of other activities we've been doing outside of our price control process. We've been engaging with the Peace Plus programme, and where we put together, I suppose, scoped up a business case and submitted it to SEUPB. That's the Special EU Programmes body. We're hoping that we will get confirmation of funding in the autumn. We've already purchased land. We're moving ahead, and we're hoping to construct a solution there which will improve the treatment of wastewater in the area, and also bring in raven spray, which has been an issue in the past. So that's a good opportunity there to bring in money or bring in funding outside of the price control process. We've also, part of that process, been looking at Beleek. We've got planning applications submitted. We've got land purchase approved. And again, we're waiting for offers, if you like, to come through from the SEUPB this sort of autumn time. We'll be keen to start then in March, April next year, subject to the funding coming through. So these are great opportunities that we've been working with to bring in these extra upgrades to the Fermanagh District Council area. In terms of economic constraints, we're addressing these in a number of ways. We're maximising the infrastructure that we currently have, and we do that in a number of ways. The most common one is looking at stormwater and trying to take that out of the existing system to free capacity for foul sewerage. We're also using smaller targeted capital interventions, and this is not a large upgrade of a network or treatment works, but it's planned work that will buy us a bit of time, which could include things such as removing wastewater between catchments where there is capacity, and removing infiltration of groundwater to allow development to go ahead. We're also promoting developer-led solutions, so we're asking developers to work closely with Northern Ireland Water Solution Engineering team to find development-specific solutions to allow their development to connect. We may have to do a bit of developer-funded work to allow that to go ahead, and that would include things like looking for stormwater offsetting, looking for stormwater in the system and taking it out to free capacity for their development, or even installing some downstream infrastructure that will allow a capacity increase. To help underpin and manage this planning process, we have a series of robust planning consultation responses with conditions to manage the environment and protect customers' homes. It's important that council planners and the local planning authority take these into consideration when they are assessing an application. Okay. Sorry. So in terms of our message to developers is to contact NI Water early before they apply through the planning process, and we've got a three-stage process here which developers should go through. The first one is to submit a pre-development inquiry, and is to ascertain whether there are any capacity issues in an area they wish to develop, and if there isn't, Northern Ireland Water will support their planning application. However, if there are capacity issues, then we will ask them to complete an impact assessment, and there are different assessments, I should say, for water and wastewater. And the idea is that the developer will work with NI Water to identify a developer-funded solution to allow their development to go ahead. At planning stage, NI Water will support any application which has been through this process. Ones which haven't, then we will recommend refusal, but then ask the developers to come in and to work with us through the proper process. In terms of the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council, we've received 66 impact assessments, and this is the middle step of the three-step planning process. Of those 66, we've issued 37 reports, and 12 are currently with our solutions engineering team. And there are 17 that we've closed off either through like-for-like development, through extant planning or developer-provided wastewater treatment works. In terms of responses by NI Water as a statutory consultancy through the planning authority, and this is the third phase of the pre-plan process outlined. Well, we've got the figures here from the last calendar year. So we've responded to 292 planning consultations. Of those 292 planning consultations, we've been able to respond to 221 in the positive with no recommended conditions. So those are the ones in green. And it's important to note that that represents just over 75% of all applications. For the 26 coloured in amber, and I'm talking about if my mouse works, no, it's the small table on the right-hand side. For the 26 coloured in amber, we have responded indicating that we are content to support planning being approved with specific conditions, and that represents 9% of the overall number of applications. For the 45 shown in red, we've recommended refusal, but refusal with a request for the developer to come and talk to us and enter the pre-planning process to see if we can work with them and find a technical solution. And that's 15% of all applications received. If we do find a technical solution, then we are happy to go back through the planning process and recommend approval with a specific condition. So in summary, we are continuing to transform as a public sector company. Our services play a pivotal role in protecting NI's environment and growing the economy. Approval of the PC21 plan gave the green light to reducing pollution and enabling customers to connect throughout our region. And we will continue to work with the Department for Infrastructure over the coming months to enable capital delivery. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this evening, and we're happy to receive questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. And lots of information in there. And we start off with our first speaker, Seamus.
Thank you, Chair. That all looked really positive on the maps there and on the wee scales and that. But in reality, PC21 was a £2.3 billion investment in water and sewage across the north. And I believe NI Water allocated 0.6% to the entire Fermanagh area. At least that's when NI Water was down the last time. That's what was in their presentation. Maybe that has changed since that. I'd like that clarified whether it has changed or not. The planning process and finding solutions with developers and all, I am led to believe that a lot of developers are asked to go through like what the planning department here calls a PAD, pre-planning application, and with NI Water, and it's actually an extremely expensive thing. And when they do come up with solutions of putting in their own processing plants for the want of a better word, NI Water never or very seldom will ever adopt them into the air. So developers are left holding the can with these processing plants. Then if they go out of business or the developer retires of that, the people then are left with nobody actually controlling these. So that's my second question, is that anyway accurate? My third question is, and this relates to my local village of Brookborough. In 2021, there was it showed that Brookborough had 10% full capacity and 17% of limited capacity. In 2024, it had changed to Brookborough having 3% limited capacity. Now, there hadn't been one single house or development in Brookborough in them 3 years. So the question was asked, and I asked it, what had happened. And I got an email there 2 days ago saying that it was a desktop analysis that was originally done in and which said there was a 3% limited capacity. But in the email, when it was actually went out and done properly, it turns out that there's a load of capacity in Brookborough. So my question is, how can planning decisions in the planning committee actually make decisions if this desktop analysis that NI Water are using isn't at all accurate? And Brookborough would have been left with any developer looking to build in it with a capacity of a limited 3%. Whereas now that has completely changed because there was questions asked on it. So maybe them few questions could be answered, and maybe I'd like to come in later on if the chair's willing.
Yeah, thanks, Seamus.
Okay, I'll take the first one. That's all right, yeah. Okay, so I think that the last presentation was quite a few years ago. So there are additional investments there. I think one of the sub-programs might have got left out previously, which was the to do with the clear water basins. And we've also included investments that are like the sewer, like the water mains rehab would have gone in on the water side as well. And we brought forward the more treatment in the Killyheaven water treatment works. So those explains for I suppose some of the changes, if you like, in the slides over the last sort of 3-4 years.
I just clarify that. So was it the Fermanagh and Omagh Council was the only one that benefited from the extra investment? Because if it didn't, it wouldn't change the percentage.
There is no extra investment. Those projects weren't put in that table back in 2021.
Because if it wasn't,
No, I'm saying that this is specific to that table that I put in previously. There was a sub-program missing to do with clear water tanks. Okay, so that adds an extra 17 million to the investment that you probably saw back in 2021. Okay, but it was always in the program there.
Hold on. So can I get a bit of order here? Yeah. So when I ask somebody to stop, can I get that? So the first thing I need, Seamus, for you to do is pull the mic down so that we can hear you when you're speaking, and then we'll take it in that rotation. Gentlemen, thank you for your cooperation. Seamus?
So again, was that extra money just for Fermanagh and Omagh? That extra money that was put in? Because if that was across the board, that doesn't make any difference to the percentage of 0.6%.
Okay. I'll come back to you with the figures and we'll have a look at the 0.6%. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll pick up on the second points raised by the councillor in question. You asked about the PAD, Northern Ireland Water. So what we have is what's called a wastewater impact assessment process. We run 2 wastewater impact assessment processes. We run one for single houses, which costs about £300. And we run one for developers, which runs at just short of £3,000 per development. That gets the developer an assessment of the capacity issues downstream of his development, and we work with the developer to provide potential solutions that they can implement. The solution can be anything from stormwater offsetting to on-site treatment works provided by the developer. To pick up on the issue of adoption of on-site treatment works, there was an historic issue at Ravensbrae and Garrison, been a good example where the developer constructed a wastewater treatment works, but did not enter into an agreement with Northern Ireland Water for the adoption of that. Following quite a bit of discussion with our colleagues in the Environment Agency, we closed the loophole. So anywhere now that a developer is constructing a wastewater treatment works serving 2 or more properties, he will only get his water order consent where he can prove to the Environment Agency that he's entered into an Article 161 for adoption of that wastewater treatment works. That provides protection to the potential residents living in the development in that we have an Article 161, we have a bond and money's there to fix the problem if the developer walks away. So we have, as I say, we have the historical problem of Ravensbrae and Garrison, which was mentioned earlier in the meeting, but we have at the minute quite a number of developers across the country who are entering into Article 161s and have entered into Article 161s for us to adopt. Now, we will adopt when the developer brings it up to an adoptable standard. We can't always regulate for developers doing that, but at least if we've got the adoption agreement, we have got the facility there to adopt it, and we've got the bond should the developer step away to bring it up to standard and adopt it. That protects the residents. On the issue of capacity in Brickborough, yes, there was a review of capacity done in Brickborough Village. There was a subsequent review done and then a further review done. Just to give some assurance to the council, where my team and I run the solution engineering team are looking at capacity constraints in a village. If it is a wastewater treatment works and there's limited capacity, we will talk to our colleagues and get the capacity reviewed to make sure that it's as accurate as it can be. So there are a number of villages, not necessarily in Fermanagh, where we have sat down with our colleagues and assets to understand the actual capacity of the treatment works, the issues affecting the developers. So when a treatment works goes from what we call green, available, to red, being unavailable, we will certainly give it a good look before we close it down completely to developers. We may advise developers as it's closed, but when they come in through the wastewater impact assessment process, we will pick up and make sure that the treatment works is at full capacity. We will make sure that any option we give to the developer is the least worst option for his development.
Thanks for that. So could I have on the second point, could I have a percentage of what them pads are actually eventually adopted by NIW?
Wastewater treatment work?
Yeah, and could also on the Brickborough one, why did it go from 17% limited capacity down to 3% limited capacity on a review by NI Water? And then when it was queried then that it went way back up again. And my point was, how can planning committees depend on what NI Water are providing as statistics if that's the case?
I will pick up on the percentage wastewater treatment works adopted. I don't have the figures to hand. I will certainly come back to you on that. At this point in time, just to give you some clarity, the process for adoptable wastewater treatment works has only been running for the last 3-4 years. So there's a relatively low percentage of them has actually got to the stage where developers has asked us to adopt, but we'll provide figures in due course. I'll also pick up offline around the capacity issues in Brickborough.
Okay. Thanks, Seamus. And just before we leave that one, Stephen and Roy, can you give this council some assurance that the same issue is not present then in other village treatment plants where the statistics are showing full capacity and no opportunity for further development, and in actual fact, when there is an on-the-ground investigation done, that capacity still remains?
We'll certainly take that away, Chair, and come back to you on it.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. Earl?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And can I also welcome Stephen and Roy here this evening. It's good to have you here. There's a lot of information in that presentation and facts and figures and what have you. Is there any chance that that can be emailed or sent across to us as a presentation? And I know I'm looking at our IT experts here, maybe, and that we could be sent to all councillors. That'll be much appreciated. Things that I have to deal with are probably a lot more down the line than this that we're dealing with this evening. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. Stephen?
Yeah, just to say, Councillor, we have provided that presentation to Democratic Services earlier this afternoon, so that can be shared. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And can I thank you for your presentation? I suppose the emphasis in the presentation on working proactively and in co-design with developers in advance of construction to try and get those bespoke and creative solutions, that's welcome. But I suppose, certainly in my case in Omagh, the vast majority of the problems that I get contacted about are in association with capacity issues that arise as a result of those areas that are struggling with, I guess, that legacy infrastructure that you referred to earlier. And I think that there is a real sense of despondency that on account of sort of cost pressures and all the rest of it, that these issues keep arising. But there seems to be a very strong unlikelihood of there actually being investment to be able to tackle those particular pressures on account of those particular issues. I want to refer to some correspondence that I received some time ago, because I've been involved for a few years now around the Omagh Drainage Area Plan. And as far as I'm aware, that received sign-off in late 2022, early 2023. And the rationale for that was to deliver outlined strategic solutions to address sewer network deficiencies that would help deal with some of the challenges that we face in Omagh. At that time, it was envisaged that potentially any proposals or solutions that would arise from that would be incorporated in PC 27. And I suppose the first question I would pose is, has any of that at all been incorporated, or does that interact with the work that you're currently engaged in the context of PC 21? And I suppose, just given how often it is that cost pressures and a lack of financial resource is provided as a rationale for not providing with solutions, could you maybe give a broad illustration of where NI Water stands at the minute in terms of its financial health and its ability to be able to deal on some of these major capital projects that we need to see in Omagh and indeed right across the wider district?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Councillor. In terms of the Omagh DAP, so that's been completed, but that will feed into, as you rightly said, PC 27, and we are literally just starting to do that PC 27 planning. We've kicked off quite a few internal meetings over the last sort of 3-4 months, and we will develop an outline capital solution by June next year, and then about a year after that, or maybe 6 or 9 months after that, we'll produce the final submission, if you like, to the utility regulator that goes for their review. They review it, provide comments, we respond, and that's the sort of the price control process. So it's very intensive, and that's part of that sort of 6-year cycle, and it's informed by the social and environmental guidance that is set by the Department for Infrastructure, and also that's aligned with the long-term water strategy. And the UR, the utility regulator, will scrutinise value for money. So we're just going down that process. Okay. In terms of the other question there, I suppose those are huge issues, and that's for the Assembly really to help address. That's all I can say about that.
Okay. And Anthony.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. And I wanted to, similar to Seamus here, a councillor from a rural village that is in the same handling with capacity, and Garrison, and you mentioned there, and represent the people from around Garrison there, and it's a major issue in our village. I know an estate agent down there, and he was telling me the demand for houses in the village is very high at the minute, but there's been no construction done for years because of the capacity issue. And I just, when the presentation was going on there, you mentioned, but I couldn't actually see the presentation right there, so I didn't really get what you see all about the Peace Plus funding, but glad Earl has asked to get the presentation sent to us so we can see it. So is it just for the NI Water is going to hopefully get money through Peace Plus to develop the capacity in Garrison in the sewer itself, and you mentioned Ravensbrae there as well. So if that was done, and that the houses in Ravensbrae could be connected to it, because it is serious problems down there, as you're aware of, and you said it last summer. The sewers did come up to the manholes on the main street of the development, and wild smell, and as you know, it's close to Loch Melvin there. So is there any time scale for that? Or I might see it when I get the presentation that the people would have a bit of hope that maybe this will be sorted out. For at the minute they have to pay every few months for a tanker to throw away the sewage, which is in this day and age isn't really acceptable. So could you just explain maybe a bit more about that, about the Peace Plus and what's going to happen? Thank you.
So it's a £4.4 million investment in Garrison. So we're awaiting a letter of offer from the SAUPB in September time. Okay, and what we're planning to do, subject to that funding coming through, is to start construction in March, April 2025. Okay, so that's good news for the people of Garrison. I know that there have been a lot of pressure. The future design takes it to 2047. Okay, so we always design to a 25-year horizon, and that then will meet the NIA, the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, Water Order consent. So we are conducting also, or at least through this integrated environmental modelling. I didn't mention that on the slide. I think that's another couple of £1 million investment there, looking at the receiving water bodies as well. Okay, so there's a lot of good work. I mean, the Peace Plus programme is looking at the environmental water quality issues and trying to address those. So yes, it's good news, and it'll also give relief as well to Ravensbury is the plan. So there'll be, I think, confirmation of that about the same time as we find out about the Garrison project. Okay.
Okay. Can I ask just Stephen and Roy about the numerous unadopted estates that we have across our council area, and certainly when we have the road service in, we speak to them about this issue as well, and the group that they have set up to look specifically at this problem. As you can imagine, there has many far-reaching detrimental impacts for our citizens living in these estates, and the bond at the time wasn't big enough to cover the cost of these works to bring them up to standard and so forth. And I speak of personal experience of the estate in Newton Butler, Hagia Meadows, that the sewage treatment plant and the sewage infrastructure has to be brought up to standard, and the bond isn't big enough, and all of that. So I'm just wondering, in what way does NI Water work with road service in trying to get these estates then brought up to a standard to get adoption possible?
I'll pick up on that one, Chair, as it's the developer services team. We, like road service, have a number of unadopted estates at present. In Fermanagh and Omagh District Council area, we have 175 estates which are subject to adoption agreements. Now, before we all get excited at the large number, a large percentage of those will be existing developments which are ongoing through the normal process of development. There are in there the likes of Ravensbury and Garrison. There's also the likes of Gallia Shore, which I mentioned as a well-known one in the area. We are working with our colleagues in road service and actively working to try and lessen the number of unadopted developments which are historic. I don't have exact figures at this point in time, but from my previous role, I am aware there are a number in the district which we're working our way through. As you mentioned, Chair, the issue is that the bond for some of these estates is very small, and the level of work required is extensive. We do have a purposeful team, a specific team in developer services within Northern Ireland Water, working across the whole of the country to try and do what we can to lessen it. There is obviously the burden of trying to finance and fix them, but that's work which is ongoing, and I will certainly provide a breakdown in due course of the age of those unadopted developments.
That would be good, Roy. Thank you for that. And in that return correspondence, could you indicate maybe as well as where the breakdown of those estates are, which estates have in the last, we'll say, 5 years been adopted? Because it's okay to be working away at them, but if we're not actually seeing any moving to an adoption point, and just which ones, the same as Hagia Meadows, have a combined with road service to be able to work there. We just want to try and get some understanding of what entails working on to try and get them adopted, and how that sort of works alongside the work that Road Service say they are taking forward as well.
Okay, so just to pick up on that, Chair, I'm happy to issue a breakdown of the age of developments, but we won't issue a list of unadopted developments. There is an issue with issuing a list of unadopted developments because it compromises the people living in them. It compromises the ability of residents to get mortgages and so on and so forth. We'll be happy to provide a list of ones that have been adopted in recent years, but any that's unadopted will remain unnamed for protection to the residents and protection to the people living in them.
That seem is what is that a Pacific NI Water? How come Road Service can identify them?
We prefer not to identify them. The DRD minister a number of years ago took the decision not to identify them because it does compromise the residents living in the estates when they go to sell or move on houses. So we will, as I say, provide a breakdown of the ages of the developments and give an indication of which ones are normal, give an indication of the number of normal ones and the number of backlog, but we're not at liberty to issue the locations of those.
And can you give us the information of which ones have been in the backlog and which one, not even, I suppose, by name, but by number, how many you have been able to take out of the backlog, as it were?
Yes, we're certainly happy to do that.
Okay. Just before I leave that one, with Road Service, with the unadoption of the estates, that has an implication for bin collections and for the repairs of street lighting and so forth. As such, what is the impacts of an unadopted from a Northern Ireland Water estate? What's the impacts directly to the customer or to the resident?
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So I suppose there are three elements of the services we provide. There's the water side and the file and the storm sewage side. The water side is not affected. Where development is unadopted, the water will have been adopted. So over the years, we install the water pipes. The developer, it's on a shared responsibility. Developer digs and we lay. So the water mains become ours straight away. So an unadopted estate has no impact on the water going into the houses. Where it would potentially impact the residents, we wouldn't provide any maintenance service for the sewers, both storm and foul sewage within those developments. So if there's an issue with the blockage or if there's an issue with a problem with the sewers, then we're not able to go in and carry out repair work or go in and clear blockages where they arise.
Okay, thanks, Roy. Dermot.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I have to say, I think it's really, really disappointing that you're not willing to provide that information for estates that are not adopted. I actually think the opposite. I actually think that residents are actually compromised when they don't know if their estate is unadopted. I know of numerous examples of people living in the Enniskillen area. There's quite a few unadopted estates in Enniskillen. People have lived in the estates for quite a number of years and have not been aware that their estates have not been adopted. And then it has become an issue, like you said, whenever there's people trying to sell their houses or mortgages or things like that. I think people have a right to know if their estate is unadopted. And I think we as elected representatives, have a duty there as well to support people trying to complete the process. So, we have a right to know as well, I think. So yeah, disappointing. But I suppose I wanted to ask a question as well. The process of completing the adoption is very long and complex and drawn out. But in the middle of that, there are people who are left with the financial burden of trying to, treat the water system or bring the estate up to acceptable standard. And in many cases, it's financially bankrupting people. So this process goes on for many, many years. and people are wondering, is this actually happening in the background? We're not even sure if there's things being done. Will this ever end? So I suppose, like, I think the question really there is, can you give us a clue on how long these adoption processes take? Is it a decade, 2 decades? Is it shorter? And is there anything being done to condense the time frame to make it, within, a year or 2 or whatever it might be? Thanks.
Okay, so again, I'd pick up on that. There are 2 types of adoption, I suppose. There's adoption where developers are working with us. It's very much a developer-led process. The developer can ask us to adopt, and we work through the process with the developer. Basically what happens is we go out, we identify the snags, and the developer then completes those snags. That process is very much a developer-driven process, a developer-led process. And the time to do that depends on the developer and how quick he reacts and how quick he does the adoption. Then there is the older historic stuff, and it really does depend on the historic stuff. If there's still a developer there, and if there's not a developer there, what works is involved getting it adopted. So some of these older historic developments are really simple to adopt, no big issue. But if you take Ravensbrae and Garrison, which has been mentioned here this evening, so I'm not letting any cats out of any bags, Ravensbrae and Garrison is particularly complicated. There's no bond, there's no agreement. There's a non-regulated, unadopted wastewater treatment works in there, which I've been out and seen on a couple of occasions. So it's particularly complicated because not only does it need a treatment works taken away, it needs a connection to the sewer network. It's really site specific. Some of them can take a few months and some of them can take a lot longer. And it really does depend. I can't really give you a time scale as to how long it takes. It will depend on what the issue is within the development. Like I say, some of the developer-led adoptions goes through in a few months. Some of them takes longer if the sewers aren't installed correctly. The big issue here, to be honest, councillors, has arisen from the actions of developers where they have not completed what they said they would complete in the agreement and then walked away.
Yep. Okay. John?
Thank you. I suppose sticking to the same topic, the last while I've been approached by people who live in areas with historic ones where builders have built almost completed the development but have left there's foundations sitting that haven't been built on in 20 years, one of them in particular, over 20 years. There's one site in a development and they're waiting on the developer to finish it off. And that's why it allegedly hasn't been adopted. The problem is the people that are living in there now, a lot of these people bought these, they were quite swanky houses. They bought them as an investment with a view when they were retiring, they had a lump sum, they upgraded into a big house. Now they're trying to sell their big house and downsize. They're having severe problems selling because the buyers are not able to mortgage because it has been identified that these aren't adopted. And that seems to be more and more, even in new developments now. The solicitors are now getting it in the ear because obviously they're supposed to run all these checks and they're being told that they're going to be held liable by the mortgage companies if they say that a property has been sold to them has been mortgaged properly, that they're being held. That's what these people are telling me, that they had their property sold and the developers. So perhaps we need to talk to the minister and see about getting that changed, because this is now going to, I think this is going to be a major problem for you and the road service in the foreseeable future, because there's people across, Aaron North in particular is the one I know of, but there's quite a few developments and they've been sitting there for quite a while, and I think it's going to be a real mess if we can't get these things over the line. I'm glad to hear that you're working with the developers, and I think that's something maybe is the planning needs to tighten up on as well, that these developers, it's a bit like cart and horse. I think the sewers, the water and all the services should be in place before they're allowed to lay a brick, and then it'll be done right. But that's my personal opinion.
Is there anything there, gentlemen, that you want to?
Well, just picking up on the site you're mentioning there, if you want to provide the details to myself, I can certainly get our adoptions manager to talk to you about any specific site that any councillor is aware of. So if you want to provide those details through, we can certainly pick up on those.
Okay. Bernard?
Hey, Chair, Roy, you mentioned there about drainage and the water servers weren't responsible for cleaning the drains if they're blocked. who is responsible for cleaning the drains when they're blocked? And just one other, businesses that are paying for water, their bills came through there with no bills on it. Would that be correct? And maybe other letters have been sent out with again no bills on them. You know, just wondered what's the story there. Thank you.
Okay, I'll pick up on the first point. I don't have an answer on the second point, but we can certainly get you one. So in an unadopted development, responsibility ultimately rests with the developer. But obviously the problem is where there is no developer there, it then falls on the residents and quite a number of estates. It would fall on the residents to go forward and employ a local drainage contractor to do some clearance of drains. It is an issue, and it's an issue which some residents do face, particularly if the drains aren't properly installed in the first place, but it would fall to the residents.
Okay, on the second point, so we aim to provide bills to customers about twice a year. So they're issued once the meters have been read, so sometimes there's a delay in meters being read. The other issue that happened recently was through a third party. They were responsible for sending out bills and letters to customers. It was to advise customers of a change in the tariff. They didn't put the sheet in that advised what the tariff change was. So I'm aware of that issue. But if there are any other specifics different than those, then please contact me and we'll get in touch with the metering and billing part of the company and see if they can help. But those are the only, I suppose that's how we bill, and that's the only issue I'm aware of that happened with the letters that were recently issued. Okay. Twice, yeah, through that third party. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. All right.
Sorry, Jared. Thank you, and apologies for being a few minutes late and missing part of the presentation, but I'll catch up just whenever I see the report later on. And thanks very much, fellas, for coming along tonight. I have one specific query, but I suspect it would probably be best addressed just in writing. It's in relation to Arnie, the treatment works out there, but I'll pop an email through because it'd be useful just if I had a record of it too, because I've been asked by a local person / developer, but it'd be useful if we had that in writing. But I would appreciate it. It's fairly swift response to that if possible, just in light of the call for sites that's open at the moment within this council.
Okay.
I suppose, Chair, it would be a few broad comments. I mean, listening to the part of the presentation I caught, and even the conversation subsequently, it would seem to me that we're on a fairly unsustainable path at the moment, unless there's something significantly done in terms of investment. And I appreciate with this new scheme, with this new initiative, there has been money, perhaps even more money than you guys might have expected in the early years. My concern would be what happens now in terms of we're so many years in, and as we all know, public finances, particularly capital on this, is going to be a challenge. So my concern would be we'll get so far and then we'll hit a brick wall, almost literally, and that'll cause all sorts of difficulty and challenges, because whenever I look at this, I see the challenges within the waste and sewage system. It's a real barrier. It's a real obstacle at the moment, not just for residential development, but broader economic development. And we know there are some towns and small villages out there that are crying out. Local people are crying out for a new development within them, but just because of the limitations of the NI Water infrastructure within it, that just options aren't there at the moment. And so it's more just a broader comment about that. But I suppose in terms of a couple of questions, I don't know whether it's entirely related to tonight's discussion, but I suspect it all is, because NI Water, waste, sewage, it's all connected. So my question would be in terms of, firstly, accountability of NI Water. So when it comes to, I appreciate unexpected events will always happen, and there will always be periods of extreme rainfall and this and that. But I get the sense, I mean, we're coming up to the time of year, particularly now, and even this week indeed, when farmers and landowners generally, they're very busy spreading slurry. Very soon they'll be on tender hooks about effluent discharges and overflows and all sorts of mistakes like that. And when those incidents do happen, and I mean, they do happen, unfortunately, no farmer goes out there to deliberately pollute a river or let it discharge into a local stream. But when it does happen, quite often they're dragged through the courts, and the
books thrown at them in terms of they're publicly shamed, named and shamed for it, and they're fined. But whenever I look at it, NI Water don't seem to have the same level of accountability or oversight. Because so to me, there would be a clear element of double standards. Because whilst I appreciate you guys will say we're in a really difficult position and we want to invest, but we're not investing. But at the same time, you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm probably not framing it right, but you guys still have even the likes of the consent to discharge, where you guys can openly apply to discharge raw sewage into local waterways and not be fined for it. But yet farmers are fined quite often for very small discharges, accidental. They don't, as I say, no farmer goes out there to deliberately pollute. But yet when I look at it, NI Water are allowed to deliberately pollute local waterways and get away with it. So that would be the first comment, whether that's the case. I suppose, and a supplementary to that would be, how often or does that happen? Particularly, like many people in here, I would live fairly close to Lough Erne. Very few people in Fermanagh don't live close to Lough Erne. So I'd like to know, does that happen within Lough Erne? I suspect it does. But are there discharges directly into Lough Erne, both of wastewater, but particularly sewage? Because whenever I think it was only earlier this week, there was a headline of, was it 20 million tonnes a year are discharged accidentally and probably deliberately by NI Water into local waterways. And that, now I appreciate some of that will be just be rainwater that's flushed through the system, but quite often that'll also include household water. So my question would be, is that figure accurate? And then second, and particularly if there are any figures, and I appreciate you guys mightn't have the local figures, but if there are any figures for Lough Erne in particular. And then my final point, Chair, would be, as far as I know, and I'm trying to think back into the back of my mind, and the people on the planning committee would probably know a lot more about it than I would, but it's my understanding that NIW or NI Water were to come to a new arrangement with NIA many years ago in terms of waste and waste oversight and waste guidelines. And I suppose it would link in the issue of discharges and things like that. My understanding is, even though that was promised many years ago, perhaps 7, 8, 9 years ago, that still hasn't happened. So my question would be, where are we with that? And is there a timescale for those new guidance? Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot there. So you talk about the accountability of NI Water and the oversight. Well, so as you say, the Northern Ireland Environment Agency is the independent regulator. So they
Stephen,
apply
can you just talk into the mic a
they
little
apply, they apply their rules, and we have to comply with our discharge consents. Concentrated or raw sewage, that would only go into the environment in situations where I mentioned at the start, I don't know if you saw it, but where you have the fats, oils and grease or the wipes, so those blockages that happen, and then that's in dry weather conditions, so there's no dilution in the receiving water courses. The 20 million figure, I've seen figures of 16 to 19 million that come out of our modelled information. So we developed a lot of models during PC 21 of the networks. So that allows us to run certain sort of rainfall scenarios through and to estimate how they, or just to show how those assets perform, and that they will spill, and there'll be 80 to 95% will be rainwater in those spills. So that's a dilution factor there that does prevent environmental harm. Talking about fish kills and things like that. So those are all part of, I suppose, the consenting process with NIEA. There have been discussions, I think, with the regulator on how we're, in regards to if there's management failure, then we are fined. If there are issues associated with investments, then there are exemptions then that come into play, or we can show that the investment hasn't gone in. So it's a difficult situation. I say it's a hard thing to square, and those are big issues, as I mentioned earlier, for the Assembly to help work through. Okay, and we're going to work closely with our department as well over the next few years on enabling capital delivery. For Lough Erne, we are developing drainage area models and also, I think, integrated environmental model. So I can get back to you with some information on that, Councillor. And yeah, I think that's addressed most of the questions, all your questions there. Is there anything that you want to follow up? I think I got them there. So yeah, but if someone else comes to mind, you know where we are. Please contact us.
Yeah. Diana?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. Anecdotally, we're told in Irvinstown that it is at capacity, and I've looked at the documents supplied by our chief planner, and the graph there indicates there is no capacity. However, there has been a recent, that was from April 23, but in December 23, there has been a planning approval for 10 houses, and the letter from NI Water indicates there is available capacity at the wastewater treatment works. So I've other people coming to me saying that they believe that Irvinstown is at capacity, but I'm seeing here evidence that the NI Water is saying there is capacity. So the question really would be for an update on the capacity at Irvinstown, please. Just backing up my colleague John, Councillor McClockery at Earn North in Kesh, the development, we've worked for a long time at a particular development there. Part of it is adopted, which is one street with 8 houses possibly, but there's probably a total of 30 houses in all. And those people have lived for about 23 years with raised potholes, with the site being unadopted. So I'm just wondering, it's the issue of the bond where a developer goes out of business, goes bankrupt, whatever. Can the bond be, I think it's maybe something to go down a legal route or to put in statute or into law, is that a developer pays incrementally each year until an estate is finished. And in that sense, that it gives them the urgency to finish and complete. It's just a suggestion really that might ease the backlog there and ease the problem. The other thing is something that happened to me 2 weeks ago. I wanted, where I live on our farm, to move a meter that's in a neighbour's field. So I pulled up, it's not probably your area of expertise, but I just wanted to ask a question. I pulled up the application form online and thought, this is a wee bit difficult for me. I don't know capacity. I need to talk to somebody about pipes. So I took myself up to Omagh, NI Water, and I met a very nice person there, you know, looking after the building. But he said, there's nobody in the building. Everybody's working from home. And so really the question is, how many or what is the hybrid working arrangement for NI Water? You probably don't have that information, but I'd be interested to know in NI Water in Omagh, you know, where is there a reception facility there for inquiries? What number of staff are working in NI Water in Omagh? How many are desk-based and how many are working hybridly? Just to have that information and the use of the building, because just conscious that moving out of COVID times that we have access to the information if possible. I know we move more in a digital age, but it's when you have people who really need that one-to-one advice, just how they can be looked after. Thank you.
Okay, we can certainly get back to you on the Omagh. We do have, of course, the elected representative hotline and water line, which are 24/7. So there are responses there that can come back very quickly from the company. On the developer incremental payment.
I suppose I'll pick up on the first 3 issues there, Councillor Armstrong. Irvinstown wastewater treatment works capacity, I'll check that out. If you could maybe provide me with details of the planning that was approved outside of the meeting, I'll certainly pick up on that. With regards to development cash, again, if the councillors could provide me with the details, we can certainly look at that and see where we're at with that one specifically. With regards to an incremental bond, the way we operate is the developer pays a bond equivalent to 40% of the cost of laying the sewers within the development up front. That bond is held. Now, there's 2 ways they can do it. They can do it through a cash bond with loads of cash with us, or they can do it through a guarantee bond where they pay a certain amount every year towards the maintenance of that bond. It's a process which has worked reasonably well now. To explain, bonds have been solely Northern Ireland Water since 2007. Pre-2007, our bond is held by Road Service, so the bond amount has been less. Post-2007, the bond amount has been more. Certainly, I'll take your suggestion back to our adoptions manager and feed it into the process and see what he says. And thank you for that.
Okay, and just before I go to the next speaker, Just for your information, can I compliment the elected rep hotline and the personnel that man that and then pass on information, follow up information and get you replies. It's an invaluable service and certainly something that has been invaluable over the years for me as an elected representative. I'm sure all the rest are equally grateful for it, and we encourage other agencies and departments to try and implement the same thing. But just to put that on record, and maybe you can disseminate our appreciation for the efforts that your people put in on that.
Will do. Thank you, Chair.
Roisin?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Stephen and Roy. I would just seek reassurance about the quality of our drinking water. And the reason why I ask that is I work with dogs, and dogs, the water runs down the mountain and they'll drink the water from the mountain and they'll drink the rainwater. And if I was to put the water that I get from the sink in a bowl and put it out to them, they will always pick the other ones first. So I suppose the question really is, does the dogs know something that we all should know, or am I?
I've got dogs as well, so and they do the same thing. I think it's because the water's sometimes colder, or maybe it's got more things in it from the soil. But I mean, I can just say, the water is, it's treated very high quality. It's that's our primary purpose, so that we don't make people ill when water's served. So we've got some of the best quality water in the world. So no, I think dogs are a bit different from us. So yeah, interesting question.
Okay, previous speakers starting to come back in here. Seamus?
Thank you, Chair. And again, I would hope that all my previous questions will be relayed and answered back, and especially on the percentages, because I'm very interested in the percentages of all of this. And I suppose the 20 million tonne of raw sewage, which is the way that the media reported it, seems to be an extraordinary amount of sewage being pumped into our rivers and lakes. And I remember last year when the whole thing around Lough Neagh, they were talking about 200,000 tonne of raw sewage had been pumped into it. But of course the farmers were being blamed for it. But to me, if a government controlled, or an entity of the government, which I presume NIW are, because it's funded by government money, is actually causing that, it seems quite extraordinary that can be got away with. I go back to the point on the planning committee, and I want to emphasise this point: just how can the planning committee trust the stats from NIW? And again, on the percentage, what percentage of planning responses is laptop responses, of not actual feet on the ground checking what the capacity is? Can that be provided to us? Going back to the PC 21, I really do think NI Water is getting off really scot-free with the councillors here, because 0.6% is what was provided. You mentioned 17 million extra. That's doesn't, even if that was all spent in the Fermanagh and Omagh area, it is only a tiny add-on to the percentage of 2.3 billion. So when you talk about County Fermanagh, it actually was broke down to 0.2% was spent in it. It's actually embarrassing. It's actually disgraceful that NI Water could come down and give them statistics that that's what was being invested in County Fermanagh, or in Fermanagh and Omagh. The largest land area of a council and possibly one of the largest number of villages and towns in any council area, that's what the 2.3 billion investment was. Just what kind of regulation or overview is being taken, or who overviews NI Water that they can get away with making that? Do they do a rural needs test? How do they get away with that? Who would have the say, and who would have the say to block use completely discriminating against this area? Because I believe Mid Ulster as well were really badly treated in that PC 21 allocation of money. So between us and Mid Ulster, we're almost half the land mass of the north, and I think between the two of us, we got about 1.3% of a 2.3 billion pound budget. Absolutely disgraceful. So I'd like exact figures of what you gang of the question, the 0.6%. So can we get the exact figure of what has been spent between now and the end of PC 21?
Okay, we can certainly have a look at that. You know, well, we are heavily regulated. The business plans are developed, you know, with NIEA, with the Drinking Water Inspectorate, the Consumer Council, NI, and their review to value for money for the utility regulator. They're based on need. You know, we don't, you know, we're not funded by square meters or anything like that. It's based on the need. Okay, so that's the fundamental driver. What's I going to say? So, you know, and also water and wastewater systems. You know, the catchments, they don't represent council areas. We don't plan by council area, or we don't plan by counties. We don't plan by electoral, you know, jurisdictions for MPs. You know, we're looking at the whole country. We're Northern Ireland Water. You know, we're not from Anranoma Water or Mid Ulster, you know, or Causeway Coast and Glens or Newrymourne and Down. We've got 11 councils there. They're all part of that landmass, and we do pump water around between our networks, you know, particularly the waters that have more resilience. So we're managing a large, complex system, you know, and it's a large elephant to eat. You've got to do it one bite at a time. We've got several price controls, I think, that is part of our long-term plan to get on top of things. We are where we are, okay? And, you know, it's hard to keep everyone happy all of the time, isn't it?
Just one other question. How do you deal with leaks in your organisation?
We've got a leakage team. We're also using technology such as acoustic devices to identify where the leaks are. We've got teams that go out. We're looking at satellite imagery and using innovative techniques that way. But it is a big issue, not just for Northern Ireland Water, but for all the water companies around the world. I've worked in organisations all over the world, and it is a big issue to keep them all maintained and watertight. But you know, we have got dedicated teams that are going out after this.
Okay, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks for letting me in again, Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for your answers this evening. Just speaking as a Noma Town Councillor, or a Noma Councillor, I should say nowadays, and the Chair referred to it there. I suppose we've had a really good service with the elected reps line. I want to commend you for that. But there was an issue there, and it's ongoing in Noma at the minute, is to do with the new sewer at Swinging Bars Roundabout, to do with the new development on the Hospital Road in Noma. And there was supposed to be a press release released a long time ago on that matter. Now, I had to follow that up on the elected reps line. I had to follow it up with DFI roads as well, to actually see where that was coming, or, you know, when that was going to be put out. So that was the only complaint I've ever had with Northern Ireland Water, to be honest. And I just thought it was a wee bit slow in coming out, and the constituents out there were, you know, getting a bit annoyed, to say the least about it, because it's a three-month project. They weren't aware of what was going on, other than an electronic sign saying there was work going to be happening for 3 months. So if the press releases can come out a wee bit quicker, it would be very, very helpful for us as both constituency representatives and councillors on the ground. So other than that, no, it's a positive response from myself. Other than that, so thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, sir. Dermot?
Thanks. I just wanted to ask a question. Could we have the hotline number shared with the elected reps and the email inquiry as well, just for us to pass over queries after this meeting? Thank you.
It'll be on the front of the presentation that's going to get shared shortly. So.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I think we have posed a lot of questions there, left some with you as homework as such, and hopefully in the not too distant future we can get a response back. I appreciate it takes a little bit of time to collate, but the sooner we can get those responses, the better. We'd appreciate them. And thank you very much for coming down and answering our questions and giving us the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, members, there is no correspondence and I have no any other business. So with that, I'm going to draw the meeting to a close. Thank you all.